Hello, 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 and welcome back to another episode of She Talks Business. This is the final episode in our series on strategic marketing to help you kickstart 2025. And I am back with Cass Ball. Cass, welcome back to the show.
Thanks. I'm a little bit sad that it's our last episode. We might have to start planning for another season together at some point in the next year.
I know, like you and I riff really well together. So if you were listening to our last episode on podcasting, I would say being able to riff with somebody is an important thing when you are creating podcast content. So when Cass and I are prepping for the show, we don't have a script. We literally have a list with just a bunch of topics, and we just trust each other to kind of banter back and forth. And that's not a natural or easy thing for just anybody to do. So when you're planning your content, plan to spar with somebody who can pick up the ball or grab the baton and run easily with you. So on that note, today's topic is all about video. So we're going to spend some time talking about what you should be creating video on. We're going to talk about different formats and what they mean. We're going to be talking about the difference between short form content and long form content. We're going to talk about repurposing. And then we've got some other, we call them cheat codes, that we're going to share with you, some little things that you may or may not know that can help you with your videos. So let's start at the top with what to film. So the first thing on our list here is really having a content plan of some sort, which seems obvious, but it's not always so obvious. So what do you recommend people do, Cass, to have a content plan? I know that from my perspective, when our team spoon feeds me and says, hey, Lisa, do a quick video on this, it makes it really easy for me to do the work. But when somebody says, hey, Lisa, can you shoot a video for us today? I'm like, what the hell am I going to say? Who cares what I have to say? That's the story that comes up in my head. So talk to me about content planning.
So I think the first thing is knowing what value you have to offer and knowing what your audience wants from you and paying attention to the feedback loop on social media. What are your ideal buyers actually saying? What are they interacting with? That's a great place to start. And then doing some planning work on the front end. And this doesn't just apply to video content. I think this applies to all content planning. Think about it like a matrix. What are the key topics, 3 to 5 key topics that you know you want to write about? And then think about all the different things you can say about that. So say one of your key topics is video content. Lisa and I actually pretty much did a version of this. We thought about our topic as video content, and then we went, okay, what are the common mistakes people make? What are the cheat codes that people need to know? What are the myths about creating video content, right? And you go through that list, and then all of a sudden you have this matrix of 5 by 5. You have all of the 25 topics that you can record videos about. And then the next thing that I'll say is when it comes to planning your video content, I think you can categorize all of your content into 2 categories. 1 is repurposed content, and 2 is brand new content. If you're feeling nervous about starting video content, because for some people showing up on camera is not the easiest thing, repurposed content is a great place to start. So think about what videos or audio you already have in the can. What can you use and reuse to dice and splice into new content? And then think about the content that you've already created in other formats. Maybe you have a blog that is like the number 1 viewed page on your website, and clearly people like that. Use it as a script to record video content based on that. And then when it comes to new content, you could pay attention to trends online and current events in the world. What are people talking about on social media right now? Record a video about that. You could respond or stitch other creators or thought leaders and add some commentary to their video and provide your perspective. And there's a tool that I love, and maybe this is one of our cheat codes, but there's a tool on TikTok that's a little bit hidden and it's not super well known just yet. It's called Creator Search Insights. If you go to your TikTok, the TikTok I should say, and type it into the search bar at the top, almost as if you're just searching for a video, type Creator Search Insights. You'll see a little icon, I think it's blue with a yellow light bulb, and you click on that, and this tool will literally show you what people are searching for and where there are content gaps. So what people are searching for and where no content exists, which means if you create content on that topic and use that exact phrase that people are searching for, use that phrase as you're speaking, put it on the screen, put it in your caption, use it in your hashtags. If you use those keywords, that is one of the number ways to get viral or semi-viral right now, is filling content gaps. So that's a really great place to start for creating video content. And it doesn't just apply to TikTok. It's a TikTok tool, but chances are if people are missing that content on TikTok, it's also missing on Instagram. It's also missing on YouTube.
For sure. And I think, that's one great way to come up with content ideas where there's a gap. Another great way to come up with content ideas is, your trusty little robot. Go to AI and ask AI to generate different content ideas for you. Tell AI what you have expertise in and ask it to come up with a list of ideas and topics for you. That's another great way to start. I think it's also important when you're thinking about what to film is thinking about it through the lens of what needs to be professionally filmed and what can just be personally filmed. So we have clients that hire us and we bring a videographer in and we do a setup and we have multiple cameras and lighting and we do really professional video shoots where we are literally recording hours and hours and hours of footage. And then at the same time, we encourage our clients to grab their phone and hold their phone up and take video on the go. So I think it's important for you to recognize when something needs to be acceptable and when something needs to be awesome. If you are recording video that you want embedded on your website, it's part of your brand story. It's going to be a permanent piece of content that people are going to view over and over again. You probably want to pay a little bit more attention to getting it done professionally. But if you are recording something, quick and dirty that you're going to throw on Instagram, it's not going to be evergreen. It's really just for the social content or to support something else that you have going on in your business, then I would encourage you to get comfortable using your phone, whatever smartphone you have for video. I would also say that, a lot of people are not comfortable on camera. And the more you practice being on camera, the more comfortable you will get. So before you invest the money in hiring a professional crew to videotape you, I would say you should try to get, your 5,000 hours in on recording snippets of yourself with your phone. Sometimes I'll record a video and I recorded one today and I did it in one take. And I was able to send it to our team. And yet yesterday, I think it took me 3 or 4 takes to record the video that I wanted to record. So all of those little practices help you to get better. And then, for those of you listening who go through what I go through, and I know that I'm not the only one who goes through this, when you look at that screen and you look at yourself on camera and you're like, oh my God, I look terrible. You know what? Don't be afraid to use a filter. That's what they're there for. Use a filter, get good lighting. Natural lighting is great. You don't have to have a Ring camera on everything you do. Like I'm recording right now in front of my window, but don't let your own inhibitions about what you look like get in the way of putting content out there. Get a filter and throw it on and make yourself feel good about the content you're putting out there. But there is no substitute. How you look is one thing, but how you come across is another. And you will never come across confident and strong in your messaging if you never ever record video. It is a skill and it takes practice being able to record video content in front of a camera on your own. So don't try to shortcut the path and not practice. Do the work.
I just want to reframe one thing that you said there. You said, it doesn't always have to be awesome. Sometimes acceptable is okay. And I just want people to know that the video recorded on their cell phone with no professional lighting, that is more than acceptable. That in itself is actually exactly what you should be doing for a number of reasons, including, sometimes speed is important when responding to world events. So maybe something happened that directly impacts your industry and your buyers. You don't have time to get in the studio and to book a videographer and to get that professional lighting and to have a full script. Sometimes you need to just show up on your phone where you are in that very moment and record. And responding with speed is a sign of true leadership. And I will also say that audiences right now are craving authenticity. People don't necessarily want the picture perfect edited clip where it's planned out to a T. People want to see the real you. They want to understand who you are, and seeing what your life looks like, and seeing what you look like on just a normal day when you haven't had a professional hair and makeup artist. Like, people care about that. That is what people are craving right now, especially when there is so much of the perfectness online. It's okay to show up and be a little bit authentic every now and then.
To be 100% authentic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really, really important. I think when I think about acceptable versus awesome to me is that polished, perfect production that you're going to use on an evergreen piece of content on your website. Whereas acceptable is grabbing the phone. What to me is not acceptable is when you've got, you're backlit, or you don't have the right, your head is like at the very, very, very bottom third of the camera. Like, make sure you're set up so that what you're doing looks professional, but it doesn't have to be perfect.
So speaking of, understanding where your head should be in the screen, let's talk a little bit more about formats in terms of, long versus short and horizontal versus vertical, because that is one of the biggest mistakes I see people who are doing that personal style of content making. They don't know which orientation their phone camera should be set at, whether it's in like selfie mode, vertically or horizontal, and they don't understand which format for a long piece of content versus a short piece of content.
100%. So let's start by talking about long form versus short form. So long form video content can be really long. It can be hours long if you want it to be. It can be, I think anything over 3 minutes is pretty much considered long form content today. Although we have short attention spans, there is still a place for long form video content. This is a long form piece of video content that is being used as a podcast, but will be repurposed as a video, and people will watch the video. So understanding how much time you need to convey the message is important. The other beautiful thing about long form content is you can slice it and dice it to make short form content, and knowing what tool to use so that you have the appropriate horizontal and or vertical shot when you are slicing and dicing long form content is really important. That's why we switched to Riverside, because it allows us to have better options when it comes to how we present the content than when we were recording on Zoom. When it comes to short form content, I think, quick and easy. I like to think, and we're going to talk a little bit about this, the difference between short form content basically and a lot of the longer form YouTube, but people consume short form content basically by scrolling. And when you are scrolling on one of these platforms, your attention span is a little bit shorter because you're not looking for information. You're looking to be entertained because you're bored. And so I think understanding whether you're filling the gap for somebody who's scrolling or you're creating a meaningful piece of content for somebody who wants to be educated or entertained is a key distinction when you're creating this content.
Yeah. I love what you said about, knowing what tool to use when creating that professional content, because I don't think a lot of people really know when it comes to doing the video editing inside the platforms, it can be a little bit intimidating. But if you trial the free version of CapCut and play around with that, if you play around inside TikTok and the editing feature in there, and same with Instagram, you will find that it does get easier. And at minimum, the key is just making sure you have captions on the screen and you're using keywords, and that if you can just do that, then you're good. That's the bare minimum, I would say. Quick and easy. It doesn't have to be super complicated.
So talk to us about horizontal versus vertical and why it makes you crazy when people do the wrong ones in the wrong places.
Okay, so when I talk about horizontal, think about video that you're going to be consuming on your cell phone. The normal way that people hold their cell phone, if you're watching the video, you can see me hold up my cell phone right now, is vertically. And the long form or the short form content that's in the vertical format fills the entire screen of your phone, right? And so you want to take up as much of that real estate as possible. When people post horizontal video content onto a vertical oriented platform, it ends up creating all of this blank space ahead or below of the video, or it makes it so that you can see the post ahead and below of your video. So it's A, wasted real estate, B, people are getting distracted by what they can already see coming next in the feed, and C, it just looks like you didn't approach the video editing with intention, because all that blank space is just being wasted. So if you're doing short form video, I always recommend doing it in the TikTok or Reel format. That could apply to shorts too. And if you're doing longer form content, like something that's going to go natively on LinkedIn, it's going to be uploaded to YouTube, or it's going to be embedded in your website, then that's when you're going to want to use the horizontal format for the content.
100%. I think you can do it both ways, but it will look funny. So if you record a vertical view and then you upload it to YouTube, you're going to have wings on the right and on the left. And if you do the opposite, you're going to have wings on the top and the bottom. So it's important that you understand it's like buying a picture frame. You want the picture frame to be the right size for the photo you put in it. When you're creating video content, you want the content to be the right size for the frame you're putting it in. And each social network, depending on the type of content you're uploading, has its own frame. Match the right content with the right frame, and you'll be golden. All right, let's talk a little bit about Reels, Shorts, the TikTok, and YouTube, and the difference between them. You and I were at a conference not too long ago, and we heard Alaric, I don't remember his last name, speak. And one of the things that he said that really, really, really resonated with me was people go to YouTube to be educated or entertained. They go to YouTube because they're looking for content on something specific. Whereas when people go to Instagram, TikTok, and even Shorts, and even on Facebook, they are often looking just to be mindlessly entertained. They're not looking for something specific. They are just scrolling and mindlessly consuming content. And so it's important that when you are thinking about the types of content that you're creating, that you're mindful of what the audience is going to be doing when it comes to the consumption of that content.
Yeah, definitely. When I go to TikTok or Instagram, there's a small part of me that uses it for education. Sometimes instead of, reading the first result that pops up on Google when I have a question, I will use TikTok as my search engine because I'd like to have somebody speak it to me. But for the most part, when I use those platforms and I'm scrolling, I'm using it as a distraction, or as that's sometimes my wind down time when I'm not trying to really pay attention to something and I just want these short little clips that are just like, they're not really making me think, It doesn't mean that you can't show up on those platforms with value for your audience, because like I said, sometimes I do use those platforms for education, and sometimes I will be scrolling for my quote unquote distraction time. And what will happen is I will see something that actually does impact me or does actually matter to me. And if it's good, I will pay attention to it and I will send it to somebody. I often send people on our team marketing and social media things that I find on TikTok and on Instagram. I'm always, sending it into their DMs and saying, this isn't for right now, look at this tomorrow morning. But there is an opportunity to show up with value for your audience. You just need to be mindful of what you're putting on those channels and know that it might not be the number one place where you're going to go to educate people.
Yeah, I would say when you look at these short form pieces of content, it's often interruption marketing, meaning somebody is scrolling and you're trying to disrupt the distraction in the feed, whereas YouTube is the second largest search engine in the world. It's owned by Google, and people often go to YouTube specifically to search for content that is typically longer in nature and more educational based. It's more how-to content. And so understanding that can help you in a couple of ways. One, it can help you to figure out, okay, what picture frame am I trying to style my video for? And two, how should I label this? Because if you think about what people are searching for, if you're using keyword search terms to figure out the best content to create on YouTube, well, the way that you title your content matters even more so than how you title content on other social platforms.
Here's another quick cheat code, and this applies to SEO in general. I was listening to a separate podcast recently, and they were talking about...
Listening or watching?
This one I actually was listening to, mostly because it was, my boyfriend had it on in the car, and he is a podcast listener, and I'm a podcast watcher, but
he's my people.
Podcast, yeah, he is. His podcast actually talked about how when you're creating content for SEO or thinking of keywords, because of the prevalence of tools like Siri, Alexa, I hope I'm not setting off people's Alexas in their home right now if they're listening to this out loud, or like Google Home. Think about the way people search things. They often say, hey Google, and they speak it. So you can think about your SEO in terms of phrases people actually say, because people say things differently than they type them. Mm-hmm. So that's a really cool point, and you could think about that for your video as well.
100%. It's a great point. Okay, let's talk a little bit about repurposing.
Yes.
So yeah, you go first.
No, that's okay. We already talked a little bit about some of the ways that some of the different pieces of content that you can repurpose. We said if you have a long form video, you can repurpose that and splice it up, and you can use some of your other top performing content in other formats and turn those into video. One of the things that we didn't talk about though is repurposing the video that you've already used. Sometimes I think people do the set it and forget it, or the one and done, where they post something and then they never ever go back to it. And I think that's a wasted opportunity. I think, you could post the same piece of content 6 months apart and a whole new audience is going to see it. Mm-hmm. Or it will generate the same level of impact and engagement as it did the first time. You could also repost a piece of content that you already posted with a new and updated sort of take on it, or you could talk about how it's relevant. A video that you posted a year ago is relevant today due to something that's going on in the world. You can
also re-record videos that you've done before. So if you were to go back and look at a video that you did a year ago, you might have a different perspective on that video. You could just re-record the video with a new point of view instead of trying to find some new thing to talk about.
Yeah, exactly.
And then, of course, repurposing through slicing and dicing video to get smaller pieces, of course. Okay, let's wrap this up by talking a little bit about cheat codes. So we have a list of things here. We've got captions, we've got SEO, we've got visual content hooks, and We've got indicate a reveal.
Yeah.
Where do you want to start?
So the indicator reveal and the visual and content hooks that's all kind of grouped together. So one of the things that you need to consider when you're doing short form content specifically is what is the hook, and I mean what is the hook in terms of what you're saying, what is the hook in terms of what your body is doing or what's happening in the background behind you, and what is the hook in terms of the captions on the screen or the captions below the video. All of those things play an intricate part in capturing people's attention. So let's talk about the hook that you're saying. There's a few ways to do this, and there's some really creative and sometimes a little bit slimy ways that people are doing this online right now. I'm not suggesting that you should do all of these, but one of the things that people do is they will intentionally do something controversial, or they'll intentionally pronounce a word wrong, or they'll intentionally drop the plate they're holding and act all surprised, right? When you do
or they'll tell you there's 3 things and then only do 2 because they want you to keep re-listening to see if you can find the 3rd thing.
Yes, or they want you to comment and be like, you said there was 3 but there was only 2. They are doing that, they're not doing that by accident. They are secretly masterminding to come up with all of these ways to get you to engage in the content. And sometimes that's really fun and creative. Sometimes I notice it and I'm like, that was good. And then sometimes I'm like, I can catch that from a mile away. I'm not falling for it, and I scroll past the video. But that idea of hooking people in is relevant and applicable to any type of short form video content. So what are you saying or doing in that first little, I'm going to say the first 2 seconds of the video to capture people's attention? When I talk about visual hook, sometimes have you ever noticed how people do a lot of videos while they're cooking and talking? Or
how about doing their makeup?
Doing their makeup.
Why do we have a fascination with watching people do their makeup? I don't understand.
It's not about the makeup. It's about the visual hook. It's intriguing. They want to see what's going on or what they're going to do, or they want to see the transition from beginning to end. But then the creator is talking and providing value, or hopefully you could be providing value while you're doing this. I'm not saying business owners need to get on the internet and do their makeup, but it's, maybe you're walking down the street and filming while you're walking, or maybe it's you getting in the door, closing the door, and then sitting down, and then doing the rest of your video sitting down. But it's that first 2 seconds of you doing something that people are like, what is going on here? That's what they care about. When it's already just a video of your face and you don't move throughout the entire video, visually boring, right?
So the 2 that I did today were visually boring.
Maybe. I don't know. I'll have to look at them.
Actually, I did one yesterday. They were both visually boring because they were literally... But, it's hard to do... Well, I shouldn't say it's hard. It's not impossible. But when you are recording by yourself, you feel silly to do some of these things. I can't imagine setting my phone up and doing my makeup while I'm recording a video. It just feels attention-seeking to me. So here's what I'm going to say, being I'm old enough to be your mom. If you are in my generation, okay, Gen Xers, and some of this stuff feels a little gimmicky to you, you don't have to do it. Because you can also just show up as you and put your face on camera and talk about something that's super valuable to people, and they will still listen to you. But if you want to do those cool, edgy, interesting things, you can do those things too. There is no right or wrong way. But what you're really trying to do is you're trying to get attention from people because you want them to hear the content that you're providing. And I think that in some cases, creating good, solid, reliable content on a regular basis is enough because people like what you have to say, so they'll stop to listen because they liked what you said last time.
Well, I absolutely agree with that sentiment. You're right. You don't have to do the visual hook if you don't feel comfortable doing it. What I will challenge is that, Lisa, you do sometimes do visual hooks and you don't even realize it. So I've seen you before start your video by holding up the book that you're reading, right? Again, if you're watching the video, you'll have seen me just hold up a book. you hold up the book that you're reading and then you start talking about it. That's a visual hook, right?
Sure.
It's movement. It's doing something. You don't always have to do it, and it doesn't always have to be anything crazy. I'm not expecting you to
I get it. I get it. When I do a video outside and you see the trees in the background, that's a visual hook because people are like, oh, that's interesting. It's not a white background. Like those types of things.
Exactly.
Yeah, I just don't want I don't want people to feel like they have to be fake in terms of the creation of a hook. So I love that you said that, because me holding up a book to say, ooh, look what I'm reading, is an easy thing for me to do. But me standing in front of the mirror doing my makeup with my camera on makes me feel attention seeking. That's my feeling. It doesn't mean that people doing it are wrong. By all means, like, I watch those videos. I watch them, but it feels weird for me to do them. What I'm suggesting is people should listen to what doesn't feel comfortable and lean into what does.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to close the loop on that last point, I also talked about hooks in terms of what are the words on the screen and what are the words in your caption below the video. An example, I'll just give you a quick example that should explain it. Imagine the caption below the video says, "You won't believe what happens at 1 minute and 32 seconds," right? Immediately it's catching people's attention and it's pulling them in because they're going to watch until at least 1 minute and 32 seconds to find out what happened.
Mm-hmm. And captions are super important because the vast majority of people are consuming video content with the sound off. Mm-hmm. So if people are sitting watching TV with their spouse at night, they're not putting the video on because they don't want people to hear. If they're sitting in a doctor's office, they're not turning the sound on. They're on the subway or on a bus, they're not turning the sound on. So don't underestimate the power of captions for video consumption. They're huge.
And just for accessibility in general as well.
Yes, absolutely.
The other benefit of captions, and I think this was one of our cheat codes that you mentioned, is the impact they have on SEO. So, your videos are searchable not only within the video platforms, but on Google as well. So you should be putting you should be saying your keywords. You should be putting them in the closed captions. You should be putting them in the title slide that's on the video. You should be putting them in your hashtags. You should be putting them in as many places as you can for every video, because all of that is going to help your content be found.
Right. And it's super easy to be lazy. So create systems that make it easier for you to do that. I know people who have hashtags, different groupings of hashtags saved on the notes section of their phone. So they can literally copy and paste different groupings of hashtags for different types of content that they create. It's easier to delete some of the hashtags out than it is sometimes to sit there and think of what the hashtags should be. All right. So that's a lot of stuff about video. Video content is not going away anytime soon. The stats just continue to climb in terms of consumption of video content. So as a marketer, your strategy for 2025 should really include video of some sort. Part of the reason that we like podcasting is because when you video record your podcast, you can repurpose that content to create video content in a bunch of different ways. That doesn't mean that I don't have to create, or you don't have to create, video content that is in addition to the podcast. The other thing that I would say about video content is I have had people reach out and say that they wanted to hire me because they've watched all my videos and they can tell from my videos that my personality and my expertise is exactly what they need. So the closest someone will ever get to forming an impression of you in person is through video. So if you do well speaking, if you end up with all kinds of people waiting to talk to you when you do public speaking, and people wanting to engage with you and wanting to do business with you, if you are not doing video, it's a hugely missed opportunity. One last thing that I would say to you, when you go to Google and you search something like how to create interesting videos, you're going to see a list of questions that show up, and it's going to give you other questions that people searched for. So think about whatever your topic is. Maybe it's how to be an effective leader. Well, type that into Google and see what other questions come up and start to curate or gather a list of the different questions, and then ask yourself, and how can I answer all of those questions, and create a series of videos that answers all of the questions that you find that people are asking when they're searching for things on Google. Anything final you want to add, Cass, before we wrap this baby up?
I think I am just excited for everyone to get started on video. I think it's one of the number one areas that people are shying away from because it is so scary to so many people. So just challenge yourself to give it a try. Just do a video a day for a week and see how you feel.
And you don't even have to post them. Just do a video a day. Practice.
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely practice. All right. Well, thank you for listening to this mini series on strategic marketing for 2025. I'm not sure if I mentioned this on any of our previous episodes, but I'm hosting a planning workshop on December 6th. So if you would like help planning your marketing strategy for 2025, you should come to my website and check out the planning workshop. We'll put the link in the show notes. I think if you go to planorperish.com, it takes you to the page where the information is. But it's going to be a full day workshop where we are going to plan your money, your time, and your marketing, and help you hit the road running in 2025. So thanks for listening to this episode of She Talks Business. And we may take a break after this episode for a week or so. Just, we've got this episode, I think, is airing on the week of November 18th. And the week after that is Thanksgiving. And I know a lot of you are maybe not listening during Thanksgiving. So we may take a little pause there. We may not. We'll see. We'll see how far ahead we get in our recordings. But thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.